Hello everybody, it's Zach here from realestatelicensewizard.com. Today we're doing our national real estate practice exam. We're doing part 2, and yes, this is our 2021 version. One thing I forgot to mention on the first video is this is the national real estate practice exam, which means, yes guys, it's good in all 50 states. I get that question all the time. It is good in all 50 states. Again, it's the national portion, so it doesn't matter Florida, California, Colorado, it will be the national portion. That is what we are covering today. Now, a couple other things. Again, if you haven't watched the first half of this video, I highly encourage that you do, because I'm going to be referencing things that we covered then. Another thing is that if you want to follow along, grab your paper pencil, do it that way, or check out our website. There we have this practice exam as well as our prep course, flashcards, and more. And then lastly, if you don't mind, just please like the video and subscribe if you want. It really helps us out. Plus, the cool thing is you'll actually get real estate exam related stuff recommended to you on YouTube. So if you know that you're going to be studying the next couple weeks, I highly encourage you to like the video, subscribe, and just grind it out. Grind out on YouTube, check out our website, all that good stuff, and you will be good to go come exam day. Anyways, guys, let's buckle up, grab some popcorn, grab your paper and pencil, and let's get started. So we're starting off on question 51. Obviously, we did 50 questions before. We're on 51 now. And our question is, which of the following is an economic characteristic of real estate? So it gives us 4 options. There's scarcity, immobility, uniqueness, or indestructibility. So I'm going to give you guys some time, like always, to think it over. And one thing I mentioned in the first video, I'll just mention briefly right now too. If you guys do need to pause, don't be afraid to for additional time, or if you guys want to speed up the video, there's a way you can do it on YouTube. I know that a lot of YouTubers don't talk about this, but listen, I'm not afraid to. You go in the little icon next to the video and you could increase the time so it can go faster. Listen, this is here for you guys. I don't mind how you guys use it. You could pause, watch it faster. It doesn't matter. I allow this time in between the questions for you guys to think it over, but I understand where some people might want it to be faster. So I'm giving you guys the options. Just know that it's there, or you can just watch it naturally and just follow along the way I go. Either way, I'm happy as long as you guys are happy. So anyways, again, I'll just repeat the question because I did say that stuff. Which of the following is an economic characteristic of real estate? And it gives us 4 options: scarcity, immobility, uniqueness, or indestructibility. So here's some time for you guys to figure out your answer, starting now. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys came up with your answer on this one. What is our answer for question 51? Well, it's going to be A. That's right, it's scarcity. So, a real estate has 3 physical characteristics that differentiate itself from other assets in the economy. 1 is indestructibility, 2 is immobility, and 3 is uniqueness or non-homogeny. So, we don't have to talk about those things in this question. What we need to talk about is the economic characteristics. And that would be, again, scarcity, meaning the total supply is fixed. And that makes sense, right? Because when we're talking about economic factors, uniqueness, mobility, indestructibility, those aren't economic characteristics. Those aren't economic things. When you hear economic, you need to hear scarcity, improvements, something investment related. You know, those are the things that drive the economy side of real estate. Hopefully that makes sense. Don't be afraid to ask any questions as well in the comments down below. I forgot to mention that in the beginning, but you know, if you have any questions on these, don't be afraid to. But yeah, so that's going to be our first one. Scarcity was our answer, and let's move on. All right, 52. Usually the appraiser is hired by the blank. So it gives us 4 options. Is it A, the buyer, B, the seller, C, the lender, or D, the mortgager? So as always, I'm going to give you guys some time to pause here, come up with your answer and all that good stuff. And yeah, so here you go. Alrighty, so what is our answer on this one? Well, the answer is going to be D, the mortgagor. So usually the appraiser is hired by the mortgagor. So usually the lender or financing organization will hire the appraiser. So again, that's the mortgagor. Technically, the seller pays for the appraiser since it comes out of the final sales price. However, the hiring aspect is actually almost always done by the lender or mortgagor. So keep that in mind as well. And again, remember these terms, guys. When I discussed them in the first video, the mortgagor, mortgagee, the things like that, no one really says those in like regular language or lingo. It's more or less what shows up on the contracts. That's why you need to be familiar with these terms for when it does come up on the contract. Or, on the exam, like they're trying to throw you a curveball on this question. That's what they'll do. All right, 53. The best way to determine fair value. And it gives us 4 options: divisional contractors, the 28 by 36 rule, the appraisal, or the gross rent multiplier. So go ahead and give you guys some time to figure that one out, starting now. Alrighty, so what is the best way to determine fair value? Well, that's going to be the appraisal. That's going to be through the appraisal process. Appraisals are the best way to determine fair value. So the overall appraisal process is based on a number of factors: cost, income it generates, which we talked a lot about last video, all that good stuff. That is what derives or generates a fair market value. And again, it's such an important process that there's a lot of time and there's like a whole industry based off of appraisals and appraising just to get that thing right. So keep that in mind when you are studying and taking your exam. All right, question 54. Which of the following would not be considered appurtenant? And it gives us 4 options. Is it A, an in-ground pool? Is it B, a trade fixture? C, a set of trees? Or D, an easement? So as always, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to pause here and come up with your answer. So go ahead and do that right now. Alrighty, hopefully you guys came up with your answer, and of course, hopefully it was the correct answer. So what is our correct answer on this one? Well, it is going to be B. That's right, a trade fixture. So appurtenant is an adjective, meaning it is attached to something. I actually have a fantastic video on that as well, if you guys are interested in that, if you don't understand the appurtenance difference. But anyways, appurtenant is an adjective, meaning it is attached to something. If something is appurtenant, it belongs to something else, either attached to or by law. An appurtenant easement is a type of easement that runs with the land as well, and these are all considered appurtenant other than a trade fixture. Because remember, trade fixtures are pieces of equipment used in business and can usually be easily removed. We talked a little bit about this in the first video. I didn't call it by name because I had a feeling we were going to see this question or one of the questions that has this earlier. But remember, those trade fixtures are pieces of equipment used in business, and they can usually be easily removed. But again, they would not be considered appurtenant because think about it, an in-ground pool, that's going to be attached to land. A set of trees, that's going to be attached to land. An easement, again, is appurtenant. It runs with the land. Now, there are non-appurtenant easements, but we don't need to get into that. And, for our sake, just keep it simple. When you see trade fixture, know that it is not considered appurtenant. So, all right, next. Excuse me. 55. State laws differ on whether a buyer is entitled to know about what. A, the sellers are getting a divorce. B, known lead paint in the property. C, the flooding of the basement every spring. Or D, a suicide that occurred in the house last year. So here's some time for you guys to think about it and come up with your answer. Alrighty, so the correct answer for this one is going to be D, a suicide that occurred in the house last year. So, for starters, the buyer doesn't need to know the sellers are getting a divorce. That's totally unnecessary. Lead paint and flooding, yeah, both must be disclosed nationally. That is the key takeaway there. Lead paint, that's a federal law. Flooding, federal. Those are all federal laws that the buyer needs to be entitled to know about. Now, when we're talking about state laws, it differs because a suicide would be considered different depending on the state. So, for example, in Texas, deaths from natural causes, like a suicide or accident unrelated to the property, do not have to be disclosed. However, deaths related to the condition of the property or if a violent crime on the property occurred, that must be disclosed. Other states impose a duty on a stigmatized property in which there has been a suicide or murder. So again, when we're talking about these state laws versus federal laws, you need to understand the distinction between the two in talking about disclosures. So again, sellers don't need to know they're getting divorced. That's just kind of one of those throwaway answers. B and C, lead paint as well as flooding, yeah, federal law says they need to know. But when it comes to D, that is a state law. That is a state law issue. There's no federal law that says that needs to be disclosed. It is just state laws. Hopefully that makes sense on that one. All right, next one. 56. Which of the following would generally constitute an antitrust violation? Ooh, okay. This is part 2 of our first question. I don't know if you guys remember this from the first one, but we had one very similar. Okay, so there's A, dividing territories, B, selling a house without a real estate license, C, transferring funds from one bank to another through escrow, or D, buying a house in another state without a real estate license. So I'm going to give you guys some time to break this question out, reread it, come up with your answer, all that good stuff. So do that right now. All right, did you guys come with your answer? Hopefully. So what is our correct answer for this one? Question number 56. Well, our correct answer is going to be A, dividing territories. Okay, so we all know, we should know by now what our antitrust laws are. I'm not going to explain to you guys because I did that in the first video, but we know what antitrust laws are, okay? And part of knowing about antitrust laws is knowing what the violations or what would constitute an antitrust violation. Dividing territories is most definitely going to be an antitrust violation. Now, a question I get asked all the time about a question like this is that B part says here, selling a house without a real estate license. Obviously, you can't do that unless you did like a for sale by owner type deal. But don't look at these questions as is it legal or illegal. If you guys were paying attention to the first one, remember I discussed that a little bit. You need to read the full question. I can't stress that enough. Read the full question. If you guys take away like anything from these videos, make sure you're reading the question all the way through. Because again, this question says, which of the following would generally constitute an antitrust violation? It's specifying antitrust violation. It's not saying, which of the following is bad or which of the following is illegal or, which of the following is not right. It's just asking specifically what would constitute an antitrust violation. And obviously we know, right guys, we know from our studying and from learning about antitrust laws and the violations that we know that dividing territories is an antitrust violation. So we know that the answer is A. Hopefully you guys thought like that, or maybe you just knew it instantly, and if you did, fantastic. But yeah, this is a super important one, so make sure you understand that and you grasp that concept. Alrighty, so 57. Acceleration is a term associated with which type of document? It gives us 4 options: leases, A, B, deeds, C, mortgages, or D, rental agreements. So here's some time for you guys to reread it and come up with your answer, starting now. Alrighty. So what are we working with here? Well, our correct answer for acceleration, what is the term associated with which type of document? That's going to be C, mortgages. So acceleration is a term associated with mortgages. The acceleration clause is a contract provision that allows a lender to require a borrower to repay all of its outstanding loan if payments are not being made or if there's a breach of contract. Now, usually, if a borrower isn't making any payments on the property, the acceleration clause will come into effect, which demands immediate payment for the property. I'm going to say that again. Which demands immediate payment for the property. It's more of a legal clause that they add for protection to make sure borrowers aren't taking advantage of them. So let's dissect that briefly. So first of all, immediate payment, you should think of acceleration. I mean, think about it. Acceleration, when you close your eyes and imagine acceleration, you think of something fast, right? You think of something quickly. Maybe something's falling, or maybe something's happening really quickly, like a car zooming off. That is acceleration, okay? That comes into play with the acceleration clause, and that's the term that is associated with mortgages. Again, it is protection. It's a legal clause that they add for protection to make sure borrowers aren't taking advantage of, them or the, mortgage company. So keep that in mind. Hopefully you guys understood that concept and that term, as well as kind of how it fits into real estate, as well as mortgages and contract clauses. Contract clauses are something that we're seeing a lot more of pop up everywhere. So if you guys aren't familiar with contract clauses, check out our videos on that as well. All right, so 58. An example of economic obsolescence in real estate is, and it gives us 4 options. A, old kitchen cabinets. B, a pool built at your mother's house. C, a noisy highway built right next to your home. Or D, sellers not being able to afford property due to economic factors. So, like always, have some time to think about that question and come up with your answer. So, what is an example of economic obsolescence in real estate? Go ahead and figure that out now. Alrighty, did you guys come up with an answer? Hopefully it's the right answer as well. So what is an example of economic obsolescence in real estate? All right, well, that is going to be C. Answer C, a noisy highway built right next to your home. So, economic obsolescence refers to the loss of property due to external factors, meaning things off the property affecting the property's value. A noisy highway would be a great example of economic obsolescence because it is an external factor. Usually, in these circumstances, homeowners cannot do anything to prevent it. And that makes sense, right? If we're looking at these other examples, old kitchen cabinets, a pool built at your mother's house, sellers not being able to afford property due to economic factors. I mean, again, technically D almost sounds correct, right? Sellers not being able to afford property due to external factors. But read that answer and then think about that again. It says sellers not being able to afford property. That part doesn't have to deal with economic obsolescence. That's something that does have to do with economics in general, but when we're talking about economic obsolescence, guys, remember that's a form of depreciation. And what does that mean? That means it's a loss of value in a home. So D really doesn't have to do with loss of value at all. It has to do with sellers being down on their luck. Or I'm sorry, D that is. I don't know if I said D or C, but yeah, D is just more like, oh, the sellers are down on their luck. That's not an economic obsolescence. That's not a form of depreciation. We're talking about property value here. We're talking about property value and it's decreasing. And why is it decreasing? Why? Because there's a noisy highway built right next to your home. And yeah, so that would be an example of a really great textbook example of economic obsolescence. All right, next one, 59. Which term refers to the packaging of a number of mortgage loans for sale in the secondary mortgage market by a financial institution or mortgage banker who originated the loans? Is it A, packaging, B, warehousing, C, mortgage fusing, or D, mortgage melting? So take some time, read it over, figure it out, and think about it and come up with your right answer. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so hopefully you guys came up with your answer, and as always, hopefully it's the right answer. So what is our right answer for this one? It's going to be B. It's going to be warehousing. So warehousing has to deal with loans in the secondary market. This term refers to the process where a bank or lender packages mortgage loans to consumers for the purpose of quickly selling these loans or those loans on the secondary market. So just one of those vocab terms that you need to be familiar with. Just one of those vocab questions. So. All right, question 60. Any loss in the value of property over time from any cause? Is it A, deliverance, B, decreasement, C, depression, or D, depreciation? So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time on this one, starting now. Alrighty, I think that's enough time for this one because I spilled the beans and I gave you guys this answer earlier. Jeez. So any loss in value of property over time, that's depreciation. Remember, we literally just talked about that 2 questions ago. Figures, right? Um, so yeah, depreciation, any loss in value over time from any cause. And of course, the 3 main forms which we addressed in the first video are economic obsolescence, functional obsolescence, and physical deterioration. So those are going to be your main 3 forms of depreciation. All right, next one. 61. Which of the following statements is true about trust and trustors? So there's A, a trustor is the one who transfers a property upon the trustee. B, a trustee is the one who transfers a property upon the trustor. Is it C, a trustor must be an individual, not an organization, per federal law? Or D, a trustor must be a financial institution, such as a bank, per federal law? So here's some time for you guys to come up with your answer and figure this one out. Alrighty, so let's go over this one. Hopefully you guys are familiar with trusts and trustors and trustees and all that good stuff, because that does show up on the exam clearly, as our example is here today. So what is our correct answer for this one? Which of the following statements is true about trusts and trustors? Well, that's going to be A. A trustor is the one who transfers a property upon the trustee. That is by definition true. So trusts can be created during an individual's lifetime, obviously, or they can be established following someone's death. Not so obviously. A trust works as it follows. The first party, the trustor or settlor, transfers a property upon the second party for the benefit of the third, the beneficiary. So the trustee is required to manage the trust property in accordance with the trustor's wishes and in the beneficiary's best interest. So a trustor can be an individual or organization as well. So that kind of like gets rid of options C and D, obviously, because that's not true. A trustor can be an individual organization, and then it gives us really make way for A or B, and obviously we know, because we know our definition of a trustor, that a trustor is the one who transfers the property upon the trustee. So we got that one right. So hopefully you guys are doing good on these sets. We're about 12 questions in. Hopefully you guys are keeping track as well. I'm always curious to see how well you guys do, so leave us down below how well you did at the end of this video. All right, so 62. Under a lease for a commercial property, a tenant agrees to pay $3,000 per month plus 4% of the gross monthly sales. This type of lease is called and it gives us 4 options: a single net lease, a double net lease, a triple net lease, or D, a percentage lease. So let me repeat that one more time. A single net lease, B, a double net lease, or C, triple net lease, or finally D, a percentage lease. So go ahead and think that one over and come up with your answer for this. Alrighty, so what's the correct answer for this one? Well, it's most definitely going to be option D, percentage lease. So when you guys see this, before I even read the explanation, whenever you guys see a problem like this where it's asking about leases and you see a percentage, it doesn't matter what, like 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be percentage lease. And that makes sense, right? Because it's the only type of lease where there's a percentage involved. A single net, a double net, a triple net, there's not going to be percentages involved. Remember, as we discussed earlier in the previous video with the double net lease, I believe we talked about that. That's when there's those 2 additional parts of the rent. It has nothing to do with percentages at all. So when you see a problem like this, just use your context clues, see the percentage, and be like, oh, I know that is percentage lease. Choose that, and then you'll be good to go. So again, yeah, a percentage lease is a lease in which all or part of the rental is a specified percentage of gross income from the total sales made upon the property. So pretty self-explanatory there. Hopefully you guys got that one. Let's move on. All right, question 63. When an asset is pledged as collateral to secure a loan, what is it called? And there's 4 options. A, hypothecation, B, encumbrance, C, investment, or D, insurance. So come up with your answer on this one. I'm curious to see how you guys do on this one. This is a little bit of an interesting one. Here's some time for you guys to think it over. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys came up with this answer, and obviously hopefully it's the right one. So what is the correct answer? What is an asset pledged as collateral to secure a loan? What is that? That's going to be option A, hypothecation. So why is that? Well, what is this? Well, hypothecation occurs when an asset is pledged as collateral to secure a loan. A rental property, for example, may undergo hypothecation as collateral against a mortgage issued by a bank. So I know for this one, I see a lot of people think insurance. That could be an option. If you're one of those people that kind of think like that, I mean, when I read this question, I even thought, oh, it might be insurance when I first, kind of looked at this a while ago. But no, it is not insurance. Even though you remember, no, let's do a callback to our first video. Remember when there was one of those questions where in your mind you thought for a moment, oh yeah, it could be that option. And then it turns out it's not. That's really, not to give you guys a brief prep talk and get too off tangent, but this is really when you need to know your stuff. When they give these options on the exams and the questions they could go either way. If you didn't know what hypothecation meant or what any of these terms were, you would have no idea what what the answer is for this one. So just another reminder that if you guys are not understanding these things, no big deal, but you guys got to crack down. You got to be writing these things down, as we're doing this video, or, reading the articles on our website where we talk about this stuff, or checking out a prep course, things like that. Like, you got to hunker down because it's going to get really, really hard. come exam day. And obviously, I'm not going to be there to lighten the mood and tell bad jokes. So, yes, keep that in mind and you will be good to go. So sorry about that tangent, but it needed to be said either in this video or the last video. But, I normally say that every year. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, all right, question 64. Enough of that. What party usually pays the loan origination fee on the Federal Fair Housing Administration loan, or the FHA loan? It gives us 4 options. Is it A, the bank, B, the broker, C, the borrower, or D, the real estate agent? So I'm going to give you guys some time to think this one over and come up with your answer starting now. All right, great. So I gave you some time for that one. What did you guys come up with? Did you come up with A, B, C, or D? So the correct answer for this one is going to be C. It's the borrower. The borrower pays the loan origination fee. So again, typically the party who usually pays the loan origination fee on a federal fair housing loan is the borrower. The origination fee covers the borrower's right to obtain FHA-backed financing. So it is traditionally paid by the borrower. Now, FHA loans obviously are loans or mortgage issued by FHA approved lender and insured by the FHA, which obviously is the Federal Housing Administration. FHA loans are sought after because they require lower minimum down payments and credit scores than many conventional loans. Little fun fact, for our first house here, we did the FHA loan because it made sense for us and it was really the best one available. So yeah, that's probably that loan is probably going to be the one that you're going to deal with a lot in the beginning with if you have young couples, maybe they just got recently married or maybe someone who just graduated, things like that. That's where you're going to see a lot of these types of loans. But again, when we're talking about the loan origination fee, that is the borrower. So I had to pay that when I had to deal with that. But again, it says usually, so not all the time, but it's one of those tricky questions, is usually. So there are a couple circumstances, but I'd say like 90% of the time the borrower is going to have to pay that fee. So, all right, next one. Question 65. Which answer includes 3 actual types of business structures? Choose the best answer. Okay, so there's A, Circula, LLC, AARP, B, General Partnership, Joint Corporation, Sole Company, C, Sole Proprietorship, Joint Partnership, and Share Partnership, or D, Corporation, Sole Proprietorship, and Limited Liability Company. So go ahead and take some time to read this one over. We did a business structure question in the first video, so hopefully you guys remember a little bit about that, and then I'll get into the explanation. So go ahead and think about it right now. All right, business structures. Let's talk business structure. So remember, in the last video, I discussed why it's important to know business structures for the exam as well as for your real estate career. I touched a little bit on the fact that you need to be aware of whether or not a business structure can own property. Well, normally they can, but how they own property. I guess that's what I should have said. So how a business structure can own property. And with that, you need to be familiar with the types. So we are dealing with types right here today. And so our correct answer for the actual business types or business structures is going to be D. We have corporation, sole proprietorship, which we talked about earlier, and then limited liability company or LLC. So the 5 most popular types of businesses, I'll just run through these real fast: sole proprietorship, general partnership, limited partnership, corporation, LLC. And so from the question above, they gave us 3 of those 5. But yeah, so those are all real business structures. I won't get into the definitions too much. If you guys are interested and these things are unfamiliar to you, I highly encourage you look that up. But for the sake of time and for the sake of video, I won't get too far into that. But yeah, just be familiar with your business types for the exam. And of course, be familiar with whether or not or how they own property. That's so important. That's why I think I've said it like 30 times. It's so important to know that. All right, so question 66. When talking about business and professional ethics as a licensed real estate agent, it is important to make sure, and it gives us 4 options. A, clients are exchanged evenly. B, some clients are treated better than others. C, all clients are treated in the same fair and honest manner. Or D, to never show clients a property during a federally recognized holiday. So I'm going to give you guys some time to think this one over, starting now. Alrighty, hopefully you guys came with your answer. I didn't want to give it too much time on this one because this one's pretty easy. When talking about business and professional ethics, guys, what do? We treat all clients equally. We treat them all in the same fair and honest manner. Our answer is C. Pretty self-explanatory, don't need to explain that one too much. Alright, 67. The 5th and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution permit the government to exercise the power of eminent domain. Oh, remember we talked about that last video? Eminent domain is commonly used for what? So A, infrastructure, B, property tax deflation, C, financing loans or mortgages, and D, development of privately owned property. So go ahead and come up with your answer on. All right, let's see who was paying attention in the last video. So what is our correct answer for this one, guys? Well, it's most definitely going to be A. It's infrastructure. Remember, I talked about that. Infrastructure. So remember, eminent domain is a term used to describe the right of government to take over privately owned real estate. And again, the hyphen underneath that is usually despite the owner's wishes, or bullet point, I meant to say. But yeah, this often happens for land that is required for infrastructure. Think, guys, highways, pipelines, railroads, things like that. That is what you need to think of when we are talking about eminent domain. All right, next one, 68. All right, Josh. Josh agrees to represent Susan in the sale of her home. The listing contract states that Josh will receive a fee of $15,000 from Susan at closing. Regardless of the sales price, is this a legal and a valid form of compensation? Ooh, okay. Interesting. All right, so there's 4 options. There's A, no, flat fees are illegal. B, no, the fee has to be given before closing, otherwise it's voided. C, yes, since the fee is lower than the United States regulated minimum, it is legal. Or D, yes, compensation can be determined in different ways as long as the seller and broker agree. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to pause here and figure out what is legal in this question about Josh and Susan. So have some time to think this one over. Alrighty, so let's find out what's going on with Josh and Susan. So what is our correct answer? Well, our correct answer is going to be D. Yes, yes. Compensation can be determined in so many different ways, guys, as long as the seller and broker agree. Generally speaking, 90% of the time, it doesn't matter. It's just going to work. And obviously, it's negotiated between the broker and the seller, and it can be distributed and transferred in many different ways. As long as they agree, it's good to go. Any avenue would be legal. So, All right, next one, 69. All right, question 69. What is the highest form of real estate ownership that is recognized by law in which the owner can enjoy the property to its fullest extent? Is it A, life estate, B, fee simple absolute, C, fee simple to feasible, and then D, estate at will? So again, there's 4 options. Think about that and come up with your answer. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys came up with the correct answer on this one. What's the correct one? Well, it's going to be B, fee simple absolute. So absolute. When you hear fee simple absolute or absolute, think of highest form. Think it's absolute. It is the highest. It's the number one. That's the way I remember it, at least, and hopefully you can remember it that way too. But yeah, so a fee simple absolute, or fee simple for short, is an estate in the land, and it is the highest form of real estate ownership that is recognized by law. Now, this is like the number one thing, so, it's honestly, it is so strong, it's only limited by government powers, which, if we haven't talked about yet, we'll cover on later on. But yeah, so fee simple absolute is the greatest interest in the parcel of land that one could possibly own. The fee simple estate has unlimited duration and can be passed on to heirs. So yes, highest form, think fee simple absolute. Think absolute. It is the number one. Absolutely number one. All right, next one, 70. All right, question 70. What is radioactive gas dispersed from natural decay of mineral and earth? Odorless, colorless, and tasteless. And there's 4 options. A, asbestos, B, radon, C, mold, or D, argon. So go ahead and think this one over, starting now. Alrighty. So, did you guys come up with the correct answer for this one? What's our correct answer? It's going to be B, radon, the silent killer, as they say. Radon. Radon is a radioactive gas dispersed from natural decay of mineral in earth. It's odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Rises out of the ground and enters home through openings in basements. If trapped inside, can cause bad things, basically. It could be harmful to health levels. Small particles inhaled can actually cause cancer and can also contaminate groundwater. Radon is usually detected by radon test kits, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with seeing those. They look like little ant traps. You're not supposed to throw those away. So yeah, that is radon. And I do get a question. I guess I might as well address this while we're on this type of question. People are like, do we really see these types of questions on the exam with, in terms of like environmental stuff or biology, or, well, not biology, it wouldn't be, well, it doesn't matter. Do we really see these types of questions? And the answer is yes. You will see types of questions like this. It might not be exactly like this, where it's like, what is radon? You know what I mean? But it might be something like, you had a client who discovered this, and should they disclose it, or is this going to be an issue? And you have to be familiar with the fact that, oh, that's radon. You know what I mean? Like, you need to be like, oh, that's what it is, and how severe it is. So that's kind of where they get that type of question, and they kind of blend it into like this practice question. Because you might see a question that's directly like this, but you're also going to probably see a question that might factor in the real estate's perspective, like, how do you deal with something like that, or how do you deal with a client that found radon or something, like, Not that they would find it because it's odorless, tasteless, and gasless, or, colorless, but you understand my point, right? Hopefully. If not, I'd be happy to explain in the comments, questions down below. But point being, to bring things full circle, you need to be familiar with this. It's going to show up in different ways on the exam. And yes, to answer the question earlier that I posed, yes, these things are going to show up. You need to be familiar with the different types of hazardous substances on the exam. So if you are not, I encourage you to learn about those as well. Okay. Question 71. A man named Troy lives in California, but owns property across the U.S. He owns property in cities like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and D.C. Troy decides he wants to sell his property in D.C. instead of traveling all the way to D.C. to complete all the paperwork. He calls up his buddy, Tony. Troy authorizes Tony, who lives in D.C., to sell his property for him. Troy gives Tony A/and what? Okay, so there's an affidavit, there's a attorney-in-fact, there's a promissory note, or power of attorney. So it's one of those options. So give some time to think this one over and come up with your answer on this one starting now. All right, so this is a little bit of a tricky one. I'm curious how many of you guys are going to get this one right. So, what is our correct answer for this one? It is D, power of attorney. So, how does this work? The legal document that authorizes someone to act on behalf of a person in business or for some sort of business transaction is a power of attorney. An attorney, in fact, is someone authorized to act on behalf of another person. The legal document that authorizes that person is called power of attorney. So this is why this problem, and specifically, gets mixed up all the time. Because again, you might have said, oh, B, attorney in fact. Well, no. You have to read the question. Troy gives Tony what? It's not saying what is Tony acting under? Because then the answer would be he's acting acting as an attorney in fact. But no, we're talking about the legal document. What is he giving him? What document is this? What does he give him? He doesn't give him an attorney in fact. That wouldn't make any sense. He gives him power of attorney. So he gives him the legal document that authorizes him to become the attorney in fact. Does that make sense? Hopefully. But yeah, with those ones, again, just be careful with the language, guys. Read the question all the way through. Read it slowly. Make sure you realize what the question is asking and then really dissect the question. And then think about what the potential answer is going to be. So yeah, D, power of attorney. All right, 72. What is the outcome when a purchaser signs a purchase agreement and gives the seller's broker a large check? Okay, and there's four options. A, the transaction is considered a contract. B, the transaction is considered an offer. C, the transaction is considered invalid. Or D, the transaction is an amendment. All right, so I'm going to give you guys some time to think that one over, come up with your answer, starting now. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys came up with the answer on this one. What is our answer? It's going to be B. This transaction is considered an offer. Yeah, so literally what they described, a purchaser signs a purchase agreement and gives the seller a broker check. That is, or seller's broker a large check. That is an offer. That's what this is. When a purchaser signs a purchase agreement and gives the seller's broker a large check, it is an offer. When a potential buyer is found, the agent must help them prepare an offer to purchase the property. The form itself is usually pre-drafted or pre-printed, and obviously forms vary from state to state, but it is customary but not required for a buyer to provide a deposit when making an offer to purchase. This deposit is referred to as earnest money, which we talked a little bit in the last video. So it's important that the buyer understands the document, as it becomes legally binding as soon as they sign it. So for our instance, why is this so important? Well, because of that last part. It's important the buyer understands the document is legally binding as soon as they sign it. So there's no take backsies, or however you want to classify it as. This is an offer. This is serious, and you, as an agent, will have to explain this, an agent or broker, whatever you're going to become, that this is legally binding. Like when you give that to somebody, it is an offer. It is considered an offer. It's legally binding. It's important. This is no joke. And as we discussed before, in the last video, there are consequences if you go back on an offer that you signed a contract for. So keep that in mind. I think that's why they like to ask you about these specified things, like, is that an offer, is it not an offer, just because they see that all the time, right? You deal with a client and someone thinks that they said something, or maybe they didn't explain it well enough, or maybe they just weren't listening and someone was explaining well, but it all comes back. There's always consequences when problems like that happen, so it's important to understand that and be familiar with that. All right, next one, 73. Choose the best answer. Which of the following is an example of a special use property? And it gives us 4 options: A, a sports bar; B, a strip club; C, a public hospital; or D, a Chuck E. Cheese. So here's some time to think that one over. Alrighty, so this is a pretty easy one. Just gave you guys a couple seconds for that one. What is a special use property? Obviously, it's going to be C. It's a public hospital. So special use properties are properties that are there to benefit the public. Think schools, hospitals, police stations. These properties are described differently because they're usually designed in a way that cannot fit in a typical zone. More examples include like religious facilities, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, hotels, truck terminals, processing plants, all those things. Think multiple buildings or large areas that maybe might not fit into one zoning area. It's got to encompass a large area. That is why it is a special use property. And again, they're typically there to benefit the public. All right, next one, 74. 3 identical properties in a suburban neighborhood were listed at the same time in a market where demand was constant. According to the law of supply and demand, which property would have sold for the lowest price? A, the first property; B, the second property; C, the third property; or D, the properties would all sell for the same price. So go ahead and think this one over and reread this one if you get stuck, because this is a little bit of a tricky one. And then I'll explain in a few moments. So think that one over starting now. Alrighty. Did you guys come up with the answer? Hopefully. So we're talking about supply and demand in this question, and this one's pretty tricky. I'm interested to see if you guys got it. So what is our correct answer? It's going to be A. It's the first property sold. So why is that? Well, according to the law of supply and demand, the first property sold would have sold for the lowest price. Remember, generally speaking, when the supply of houses goes down, the price goes up, and vice versa. So if you look at this problem, it says 3 identical properties. So obviously it's like a hypothetical question. This actual instance probably wouldn't happen, but the reason that they ask these types of questions is so that you understand supply and demand and how it affects the market. So anyways, 3 identical properties in a suburban neighborhood were listed at the same time. And this important takeaway, it says a market where demand is constant. So obviously, Again, it's a hypothetical. If demand was constant. So according to supply and demand, which property would have sold for the lowest price? So again, that is the first property. Now let me ask you a second question, a little bonus points. What do you think would have sold for the highest property? Or the highest price? It would be the third property sold. Because again, supply is lowering. As supply lowers, demand increases, and thus the prices would increase. So obviously that's a simplified version of supply and demand, because it's very simplified in the instance that we're not factoring in a lot of other, typical factors. And obviously it says where demand was constant, which that is, that's more of a tricky case. It doesn't happen that often. But point being, this is a textbook supply and demand question. So if you did not understand this, I encourage you, please watch our video on supply and demand. It'll give you a better explanation of how that works, and kind of how the formula, in your mind, and how you could dissect things and understand properties and economics. And yeah, so we have a whole full video on real estate economics. I encourage you to check that one out if you did struggle with this question. All right, next question. 75. Traditionally, real estate agents are paid through a fee paid for performing a transaction, called a what? A wage, B, a salary, C, a commission, or D, an earnest deposit. So have some time to think this one over, starting now. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys came up with the answer. Didn't want to give you too much time on this one, because again, let's not waste time. This is a pretty easy one. Obviously, our answer is going to be commission. Don't overthink this, guys. And you know what? I'm sorry. I apologize if I said this was easy, or if, sometimes I forget that this stuff is new to some people as well. So let me just take a moment and apologize for that. I didn't mean to offend anybody there. Because obviously this stuff is confusing no matter what. You could have put earnest deposit here, because, I mean, think about it. Some people, they might think, oh, well, the earnest deposit, maybe that's the commission, things like that. So I apologize for saying it like that. Point being, though, this is a question. I'm not saying it's easy per se, but this is a question that you should understand by now. We are studying for the exam. They should have covered this in your pre-licensing. You should be familiar with the term commission and kind of how it works. If not, that's okay too, because that's why you're here. That's why you're here to learn, and you're already taking the step forward, and that's awesome. And you should give yourself like a round of applause for grinding this out, because so many people, they just walk into the exam and they find out, and maybe that's where you're here. Maybe you found out, oh boy, you took it and it was like, oh, it was a little hard. I gotta study up, and maybe that's where you're here. Or maybe this is your first time around and you just want to be prepared. Point being, I appreciate you guys spending time with me today. And let's keep grinding this out. So obviously, yes, commission, guys. Traditionally, real estate agents are paid through a fee called a commission. All right, so 76. During a standard residential transaction, verifying ingress and egress rights is an essential part of the what? And there's four options. A, due diligence process, B, appraisal process, C, closing process, or D, open house. So going to give you guys some time to think that one over, starting now. Alrighty, so what is this an essential part of? Well, it's going to be A. It's our due diligence. It's the due diligence process. Verifying ingress and egress rights is an essential part of the due diligence process when purchasing property for both real estate agents and buyers. If one of your clients is planning to buy landlocked property, don't assume anything. Check records. Have the land surveyed. It's necessary. Due diligence is the process of examining the details of the transaction to make sure it's legal. When the deal satisfies both aspects of due diligence, the parties can finalize and correctly price and finalize the transaction, things like that. So with this one, again, guys, And we might discuss ingress and egress rights maybe if another question shows up. So I won't get too much into that. We do have a video on that as well if you're interested in that, but don't want to get too off topic. When we're talking about due diligence, guys, all these things, not just ingress and egress rights, there's a lot of things that are involved, and they're part of that process. It's not closing, because some people get this confused. They think, oh, it's the closing process, when you close, or maybe it's the job of the appraiser. Maybe it's the appraiser process. No, it is not. It is the due diligence process, which again is either the buyer or the agent or both. And if you are a really good agent, you are going to inform your buyer that if property is landlocked, that they need to figure that out. Don't assume anything. Check your records. Have the land surveyed. It saves you so much time in the long run if you have proof that you recommended that, and if something does happen, there's a hiccup, things like that. So just be aware of that. Not just for the exam, but for when you're out there, when you're grinding out, when you're selling houses and all that good stuff, selling, buying. All right, so question 77. We're almost there, guys. Keep up the great work. All you guys have made it this far. Seriously, you guys are killing it. You should be proud of yourselves. Okay, so question 77. Assuming there are no extra fees and the broker is representing the buyer and the seller, what was the final sales price of a property if the commission rate was 5.5% and the broker received $11,000? So it gives us four options. A is $60,500, B is $66,000, C is $175,000, and then D is $200,000. So it's a math problem, so give it your best, and it's an important one. This is like the most likely math problem that you will see on the exam, definitely. So take your time with this one and come up with your answer starting now. Alrighty, so did you guys do the math? Did you bust it out? Hopefully. So what is our correct answer for this one? Well, it is going to be $200,000. D is our correct answer. So the formula for finding commission is pretty simple. Just times whatever percentage you have by the total price of the house. So in this case, they gave us the rate and what the broker received. So we just have to adjust the steps. In order to find commission, you take your $11,000, that number right here, and then you multiply, and then you divide it by the percentage, which is 0.055. So remember to carry over that decimal, making your total $200,000. Alternatively, you can take the answers below and actually multiply each one by 0.055. Whichever matches the broker's commission would be the correct answer. That's also a little life, math hack. If you take each one, I've seen people do it both ways. Honestly, I'm not here to say which way is the better way. I'm here to tell you that whatever way you feel most comfortable with, you should do. That's what you want to do. Whatever you are used to, whatever you feel comfortable with, use that method. Because ultimately, there's always these math purists that are always like, it has to be this one way. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, the types of people. I'm never going to be like that, guys. Math, I don't like math either. I'm going to be honest. It drives me nuts. I just do the math so that I could, ace my exams and bust that out and just. But it's an important part of our lives, especially when we're dealing with these exams. So you need to figure out a way that you're most comfortable with it. So either you're taking that commission rate, that 0.055, because remember you're carrying over the decimal, 0.055, you're multiplying it by each one. That's the one method. Or like I said, you're taking that $11,000 and you are dividing it by that or 0.055. So either way, just make sure you know how to do it. Either way, and make sure you find the one that you are most comfortable with and you do it that way. All right, question 78. Which of the following is an example of economic obsolescence? So choose the best answer here, guys. There's 4 options: A, broken shingles; B, old shaggy carpet; C, flight patterns above your house; or D, a large shed in the backyard that is rotted. So here's some time to think this one over, starting now. Alrighty, so we discussed this a little bit earlier, I believe. If it was if it was in this video or the one before, I can't remember. Point being, we discussed economic obsolescence. Obviously, we talked about depreciation. We talked about all the good stuff. So this one should come to you guys quickly. So the correct answer here is C. It's flight patterns above your house. Remember, guys, this is external factors, meaning things off the property affecting its value. You can't do anything about flight patterns above your house. You know, you can't grow a tree that is a million miles up there to prevent people from flying over your house. You can't do it. It's an external factor, no matter what. It is just that form of economic obsolescence. That's what it is. It's that form of depreciation. And again, you know, flight patterns, highways, rise in local crime, those are all examples of economic obsolescence. So hopefully you got that one. All right, question 79. Restrictive covenants are also known as what? Gives us 4 options: A, deed restrictions; B, CCRs; C, bonds; or D, CDOs. So go ahead and take some time and come up with your answer for this one. Alrighty, so what is our answer for this one? Well, it is going to be B, CCRs. So what does CCR stand for? Well, that stands for conditions, covenants, and restrictions. So the main purpose of CCRs is to maintain a look and feel of a community. CCRs limit the use of a particular property, condominium, or subdivision. Such restrictions are either written in deeds to the property or into bylaws of the subdivision, which the deeds would then reference. Now, in real estate transactions, restrictive covenants are binding legal obligations written into the deed of a property by the seller. So again, CCRs, restrictive covenants, essentially the same thing. Just make sure you're familiar with that term and kind of its abbreviation as well. All right, number 80. Enacted in 1974, which of the following is a regulation that aims to give all legal individuals an equal opportunity to apply for loans? Is it A, the Fair Housing Act, excuse me; B, the Credit Consumer Act, the CCA; C, the Civil Rights Acts; or D, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or the ECOA? So go ahead and take some time, bust this one out, and come up with the correct answer. So here you go. All right, what is our correct answer for this one? Well, it's most definitely going to be D. It is the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or the ECOA. So the Equal Credit Opportunity Act is a regulation that aims to give all legal individuals an equal opportunity to apply for loans. So the act prohibits creditors and lenders from considering a consumer's race, color, origin, sex, religion, or marital status in deciding whether to improve their credit application. This act protects consumers from being wrongfully discriminated. No matter what type of person applies for a loan, they cannot be turned away to factors that are not directly related to their credit. So pretty self-explanatory there. Oops. When you see this, when you look at this one, just remember equal credit opportunity. When you say equal opportunity, just remember this Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Remember, those two things go hand in hand. All right, next one, 81. So under the terms in a mortgage, the lender must be paid in full if the property is sold to another person. This is known as, and it gives us four options. There are four clauses, contract clauses. Remember, I was giving you guys a little bit of a warning about that earlier. So we're seeing these in these later questions. So A, the alienation clause, B, the dominant clause, C, the habendum clause, or D, the acceleration clause. So which contract clause does this pertain to? What is the correct answer here? So have some time, read this one over again, and come up with your answer. Alrighty, so contract clauses. All right, these are always super fun, or we trying to make them fun. So when we are talking about lender must be paid in full if the property is sold to another person, we are talking about A, the alienation clause. So the alienation clause is a contract provision that comes into effect when ownership of a specified asset is transferred or sold. It ensures that if a transfer of property happens, the lender is paid in full from the original borrower. It's basically a legal cause that lenders add for protection. And as you'll notice with a lot of these contract clauses, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but a lot of these clauses are designed to protect the lender in some form. Now, granted, there are some contract clauses, obviously, that protect the mortgage company, or I'm sorry. This one obviously is protecting the sorry, we're going on question 81. I'm drawing a blank here. The acceleration clause is a contract provision that comes into effect when ownership of the specified asset is transferred or sold. It ensures that if a transfer of property happens, the lender is paid for. Yes, okay. So the alienation clause protects the lender, while other clauses protect the borrower. But I will give you guys a little hint here. Most contract clauses protect the lender. That's just the way it is. And think about it. They are investing a lot of money into, to essentially random people. And that's why the credit scores are so important. That's why they're looking at these things to protect themselves. So when we look at the alienation clause and you see here, lender must be paid in full if the property is sold to another person, think alienation clause. That is one of those clauses that is protecting the lender. Hopefully that made sense. Sorry, I kind of spaced off there. Again, we're on question 82, and I decided to do these back to back, so bear with me. Luckily, I got my coffee near me, so I've been having that every once in a while, and that's kind of getting me through. And I'm sure, little pro tip, when you guys have your exam, make sure you guys have, whether there be coffee, tea, or water in the morning to get you all juiced up so that, or maybe just a banana or some sort of fruit. That goes a long way. I'm telling you guys. I know it's a lame thing. It's like, what are we in high school? But literally, guys, when's the last time you guys took a standardized test? Leave it down below. Leave a comment. When is the last time you took a standardized test? It was a while for a lot of people, like in my group. It was a while for me. I want to say almost 5 years. So like for people, like you, maybe it's been that long. Maybe it's been 20 years. Who knows? But point being, take this all very seriously. Have your little coffee or have your little banana in the morning. Goes a long way. I know I have my coffee here, and it's definitely helped me getting through these questions. And I'm just reading the questions. I got the easy part. You guys got the hard part, right? All right, enough about that. Question 82. We're almost there. All right, which act amended the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, also known as CERCLA? And there's four options. It's the SARA, or SARA, the SDWA, or, I'll just leave the abbreviations, or B, the SDWA, C, the CWA, or D, the EPA. So come up with the answer for this one, and here's some time for you. Alrighty, so what's the correct answer for this one? Which act amended the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, also known as CERCLA? So what amended CERCLA? That's going to be the SARA, also known as the Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act of 1986. So that was passed when the original act expired in 1985, and basically what it did is it amended CERCLA, and it added a lot more liability. So the big change, again, was liability. When a property owner has been innocent of all involvement with hazardous waste site under certain circumstances, he may claim immunity from responsibility. In plain terms, it allows truly innocent landowners to have immunity from legal liability. So it's super important to understand that. And obviously, SARA also required the EPA to revise the hazard ranking system to ensure that it accurately assessed the relative degree of risk to human health and environment posed threats, things like that. So, be familiar with these, because I think I mentioned this maybe in the first video, but environmental law comes up a lot, especially if you're dealing with commercial real estate. And you might be, looking into, maybe you've got a business who's looking at factories in the area, and maybe it used to be an old steel mill, and maybe they were dumping things or something like that. Like, this stuff does come up all the time in commercial real estate, so be familiar with the laws, and obviously for the exam, this is going to show up. All these questions that are on here today are going to show up one way or another, whether it be the question itself or even the specific topic that it covers. Most likely it'll be that. So be familiar with that if you're struggling with those terms and with those laws. All right, question 83. Which of the following best describes a balloon payment? It gives us four options. Is it A, a packaged mortgage, B, a small monthly payment, C, a variable mortgage cost, or D, a large payment during the term or at the end of the payment schedule? All right, so gonna give you guys some time to think that one over, starting now. Alrighty, so we're on question 83. We're grinding it out. Hopefully you guys are hanging in there. Hopefully you guys got this question right. What is our correct answer? It's going to be D. It is a large payment during the term or the end of the payment schedule. So a balloon loan, we haven't covered that yet, but basically it has to do with amortization and obviously when payments are divided. But a balloon loan is different, as not all payments are equally divided, and the most substantial payments are called balloon payments. So again, that's a large payment during the term or the end of the payment schedule. All right, next one, 84. What is the measurement or boundary between a plot of land or building and the road onto which the plot or building fronts? Okay, so is it A, the width, B, the frontage, C, the servient width, or D, the servient length? Oh, okay. So I'm going to give you guys some time here, think this one over, and come up with the correct answer. So go ahead and do that now. Alrighty, so what is the measurement or boundary between a plot of land or a building and the road onto which the plot or building fronts? Woo! It's a little bit of a mouthful. I can't stand questions like that. It's always complicated questions with simple answers, and our simple answer for this one is going to be B. It's frontage. Again, by definition, frontage is the boundary between a plot of land or a building and the road onto which the plot or building fronts. So frontage may also refer to the full length of this boundary. This length is considered especially important for certain types of commercial and retail real estate in applying zoning bylaws and property tax. So again, just another one of those vocab terms that you got to be familiar with. And actually, there's a math problem associated with frontage, which I don't know if we'll see. Maybe we'll see in this exam, but that does show up as well. So if frontage is something you've never heard of before, mark that down on your pen and paper or your notes or however you're doing this, and look into that. We do have a video on that as well if you want to check out. Okay, 85. Which of the following best describes the acceleration clause? It gives us four options. A provision in a mortgage or deed of trust signed with the lender that states that the borrower must pay the mortgage in full before the borrower can transfer the property. B, a contract provision that requires a borrower to repay all of an outstanding loan if upon breach of contract. Or C, the statement that a lender can penalize a borrower if the borrower pays off the mortgage much sooner than usual. Or finally, D, a contract provision in real estate that establishes the order of priorities of financial claims. All right, I'm going to give you some time to think that one over. Reread it if you need to. Pause, discuss, whatever you need to. Go ahead and do that right now. Alrighty, did you guys come up with the answer? Hopefully. So our correct answer for this one is going to be B. A contract provision that requires a borrower to repay all of an outstanding loan if upon breach of contract. That is the acceleration clause, pretty much by definition. We talked a little bit about the acceleration clause before, I believe. We talked about the generic. I think the question was something along the lines of like, if you hear the term association, or if you hear the term acceleration, what should you associate it with? And obviously we're talking about mortgages. That was the answer for that one. So again, this one's more asking about what best describes the clause, and that is what the clause is basically what it gave. So a contract provision that requires a borrower to repay all of an outstanding loan if upon breach of contract. And basically, just to give you a quick example of what that might look like, let's say part of the contract is that you have to keep the property. You have to pay the taxes. Okay, maybe that's it. So maybe you have to pay all the taxes associated with the property. If you don't, then the acceleration clause can kick in, and you would be in considered breach of contract, and that would require the borrower to repay all of the outstanding loan. Make sense? Hopefully. So that was a good example for that, so just keep that in mind. All right, 86. Which of the following consumers would most likely qualify and be able to derive the most benefit from refinancing their mortgage? Okay, it gives us four options. A young homeowner with a low credit score whose property is free of encumbrances. B, a young couple who wants to own a house but doesn't have enough credit to qualify yet. C, a middle-aged couple with high credit whose mortgage loan has a high interest rate other than their current rate for new loans, Or D, a couple in their late 60s who need to tap their home equity to help cover their expenses but do not want to sell their house. So a couple good options there. I'm going to give you some time, so think that one over. Come up with your answer. Come up with the right answer. Starting now. Alrighty, so what is the correct answer for this one? Well, it is most definitely going to be option C. It's a middle-aged couple with high credit whose mortgage loan has a high interest rate than the current rate for new loans. Okay, so let's dissect that a little bit. In this instance, first of all, age doesn't really matter. It's giving us all these ages. That really doesn't matter. What does matter is that the middle-aged couple has a mortgage with a high interest rate, and the current rates are much lower. They would most likely qualify for a refinance, and they would definitely derive the most value from it. Bonus tip, the rule of thumb is that refinancing is a good idea if you could reduce your interest rate by at least 2%. So generally speaking, homeowners should have a solid credit score to refinance, although there are a few exceptions in the government. They have like government-run loan assistance programs, but we don't need to know that. So One quick full circle thing about this question is they will ask you things like this where it's like, what customer would get the best deal or what customer would get the best value? And my advice to you is typically don't look at the don't look at, how should I say this? Don't look at the parts that can't be changed. So, for example, in this group of options, it says young homeowner, young couple, middle-aged couple, couple in their late 60s. That really doesn't matter in most cases unless they're talking about, um, a reverse mortgage per se. But in our case, it's just basically giving us a bunch of a random different people. What is important and what they can change is their, the credit. So you saw and see high credit. And then you also see mortgage loan has high interest rate. Okay, you know that their loan has a higher interest rate, which means they would benefit from refinancing, right? That is the definition. There's a whole reason to refinance is for people like that with a high credit who's, they currently have a high interest rate on their loan, and maybe loans right now are going for way lower interest. So we're actually seeing that all the time right now. And maybe that'll change, in the future, who knows? But right now we're seeing a lot of people refinance because rates are so low. So yeah, be familiar with that and be familiar with how refinance works. And hopefully I taught you something a little bit about that today if you weren't already familiar with that. Okay, so 87. By which of the following can you not lose title to your property involuntary? So there's four options: A, adverse possession; B, foreclosure; C, dedication; or D, avulsion. So like always, have some time to figure this one out. So take some time to figure it out starting now. Alrighty. So what are we dealing with in this question? We're looking at involuntary. So by which of the following can you not lose title to your property involuntary? Okay, so the correct answer for this one is most definitely going to be dedication, C. So why is that? Well, dedication in property law means the donation of your land. Dedication would be considered voluntary, while all the others are involuntary. Obviously, your foreclosure, okay, that's involuntary. Adverse possession, most definitely involuntary. And avulsion, the stripping away of that land, that's involuntary. You don't decide that. That's almost like an act of God. But yeah, it's definitely C here. No questions about it. Dedication is the donation. So this is another one. It's not a direct vocab question, but this is another question where you need to be familiar with the terms to understand the question. And I hope you guys are seeing that now, or maybe you've seen it before. But really, I can hit that home. When you're done with this. Okay, these vocab terms are important not just for the questions that directly ask you vocab related questions, but there's questions that are where they put all these things together, and you have to be familiar with vocab terms to answer the question. So hopefully that makes sense. Alrighty, next one. So a property's market value is $400,000. The assessment rate for the house is 25% with a 22.75 mils and a $25,000 property tax deduction. Find the annual property taxes, and it gives us four options: A, $426.56; B, $1,706.25; C, $2,132.81; and D, $2,275. $2,275. So come up with your answer. Bust out the calculator if you need to. I'll give you guys some extra time on this one because it is a math problem. And find the annual property taxes. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, starting now. All right, let's dissect this problem. So it's another math problem. So for those of you guys who are like, oh, math, I know, but it does show up on the exam, especially these property taxes and like I said, the commission problem. That you will see a commission problem. There's no doubt in my mind. That's just the way it is. So for this property tax problem, let's bust this out real fast. So our correct answer for this is going to be B. So how did we get that? So let's talk property taxes. So luckily we have videos covering this. If you need to find them, it's in our specific math practice question problems. We do have videos covering this. So I'm just going to run through this for the sake of the video because we're probably way over an hour already. But if you do struggle with this, we do have videos available. So for this one specifically, in order to find the market value, we have to look at the term right here, $40,000. So it gives us the market value. So then what we need to do is take that 40,000 and multiply by the assessment rate, which that's going to be 25%. So again, remember we convert that to decimal. So $400,000 times 0.25, and that gives us $100,000. Now that we have the assessed value, we have to subtract the deductions. So again, it gave us this deduction here, that $25,000 property tax deduction, which gives us $75,000. Now the next step is to utilize mills. If you guys are unfamiliar with mills and mills rate, we do have a video on that as well. And what you're going to do with that, is the mill rate is the amount of taxable payable per dollar of assessed value. So what you have to do is multiply the assessed value by the mill rate. So that would be $75,000 times 0.2275. And I know that I always get questions about the decimal on this one, and don't worry, we do cover that in the video, how to do the decimal points and stuff like that. And doing all that gives us a grand total of our annual property taxes, which is $1,706.25. If you struggled with that, if you had no idea what I was saying that entire way, please check out our math series. I did daily math questions, I want to say in spring, where I covered this. I believe it was like in the first 5, maybe 10 videos. I cover property tax. So go and write that down in your notes. You finish this video first, write that down in this notes, and after you're done with that, definitely look that up, because that is tricky, and honestly, it took me a long time to understand that. It takes a lot of people a long time to figure that out. So check that out. Don't be afraid to find help. Help's here, guys. We are help. We are the help. There's so many videos out that I've created, we've all created to help you guys. So just find them if you need them, or send me a comment and I'll try and point you in the right direction if you can't find it. All right, so question 89, only 11 more. In real estate, alienation is best described as what? There's 4 options. A, denying use of an easement. B, changing a property from one zoning district to another. C, the act of transferring bonds, cash money, or any form of currency in escrow. Or D, the act of transferring title, ownership in a estate, or an interest in real estate from one party to another. So go ahead and come up with the answer on that one. Here's some time for you guys to figure it out. Alrighty. Okay. So we are on question 89. You guys are killing it right now. Again, I can't believe if you guys made it through this far, you guys are doing such a fantastic job. Keep up the great work. We're almost there. Keep grinding. You guys are doing fantastic. Keep up the good work. Okay, so in real estate, alienation, what is that best described as? Well, the answer is going to be D. It's the act of transferring title, ownership of an estate, or ownership, or of an interest of real estate from one party to another. So the actual transfer of title in real estate obviously is handled by lawyers or title agencies, not a real estate agent. However, as with other legal aspects and transactions, obviously us agents, or not us agents, sorry, but soon to be agents, right? Soon to be agents need to understand them. So alienation is the act of transferring title, ownership, an estate, or an interest in real estate from one party to another. So be familiar with that. And again, with these, you might not directly deal with alienation, but again, the exam, they like They like you to be familiar with these terms because it's going to come up around the office. It's going to, it's going to come up in the transaction. You might not have to directly deal with it, but again, you're going to have to be familiar with it. All right, question 90. Which type of property would an appraisal use a depth table to estimate the property value? A, government-owned property, B, commercial property, C, special use property, or D, a residential property. So go ahead and come up with your answer on this one, starting now. Alrighty, so when we're talking about depth tables, what are we talking about? We're obviously talking about commercial property. Commercial. So a depth table is used to estimate the value of commercial properties. Depth table is a table used by appraisers to show land values in percentages based on variations of the depth of the lot. So honestly, for this one, just be familiar with, be familiar with the term and kind of how it's associated. Obviously, again, this appraisal stuff, you're gonna have to be familiar with it for the exam. It just shows up all the time. So if you don't, look into it, and we'll be there. We can explain it and teach it with you. All right, 91. What type of court handles the analysis and transfer of real estate or general real estate assets of a deceased person without a will? It gives us 4 options. Is it A, injunction, B, escheat, C, probate, or D, estate? So again, what type of court handles the analysis and transfer of real estate or general assets of a deceased person without a will? So here's some time to come up with the answer on that one. Alrighty, so what's the answer for this one? Well, it's most definitely going to be C. It's our probate court. Probate court. Probate is the analysis and transfer administration of estate assets previously owned by a deceased person. So when a property owner passes away, his or her assets are commonly reviewed in a probate court if they do not have a will. So they don't have a will, which means they technically don't have any heirs, legally speaking. So the probate that's their job, is to administer and divide up assets accordingly. Hopefully that makes sense. And I get this question all the time. Do these courts show up on the exam? Obviously, guys, again, everything that's on here is going to be either close to what's on the exam, or some sort of material that is next, literally verbatim. I mean, point being, yes, this is important. The courts, the injunctions, the probate courts, because again, what does it deal with? It deals with real estate because it deals with someone passing away and then how they transfer real estate. And transfer of real estate is what business we're in. I mean, that's the business that you will be in soon, and you need to be familiar with it. Okay, 92. Which of the following real estate contract clauses establish orders of priorities of financial claims, in parentheses liens? 4 options: the release clause, A, the release clause, B, habendum clause, C, acceleration clause, or D, the subordination clause. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think that one over and come with your answer on that one. Alrighty, so we're on question number 92, and we just asked, which of the following real estate contract clauses establishes order of priorities of financial claims? So what is our answer for that one? It is most definitely the subordination clause. It is D. So the subordination clause in real estate establishes orders of priorities of financial claims. The subordination clause effectively makes the current claim number 1 to any existing claims that have already been recorded. So I won't explain too much about this, but it's just another one of those contract clauses that you need to be familiar with. You need to be familiar with how it works, how it's presented, how who it protects. Remember earlier I went off on that tangent about does it protect the lender? Does it protect the borrower? Obviously, this would protect the lender or the current claim owner, because it's putting them at the number one claim. So just keep that in mind as we discuss questions like that. All right, 93. Okay, brokerages and real estate agents across America connect using a blank. So is it a multiple listing team, or MLT? Is it a multiple listing bank, or MLB? Is it the multiple listing service, MLS? Or is it D, the multiple listing group, MLG? So going to give you guys some time to think that one over. All right, that's enough time for that one. This one's pretty easy. We all know that, or we should know this one. It's the MLS, it's the multiple listing service. Often agencies compete with each other, but sometimes, they got to work together. And that's where the MLS comes into play, connects listings under together one umbrella. All right, 94. Majority of homes before what used lead paint? Gives us four options: A, 1950, B, 1972, C, 1978, or D, 1993. So come up with your answer. Here's some time for you guys to think about it and figure it out. Alrighty, so we gotta know a date for this one, or a year at least. What is our correct answer? It is C. It is 1978. So, why is that important? Because I know a lot of people get this confused. The Residential Lead Paint Based Hazard Reduction Act was established in 1996. Real estate agents must be aware of the federal law that provides homes before 1978 the following. And it basically just gives buyers 10 days to obtain certified inspection assessment before purchase obligation, or must disclose information about existing lead paint. So yeah, this is super important to know. This date you should be familiar with. 1978. Just remember that. 1978, 1978, 1978. Ingrain that in your brain because it's going to show up on the exam as well as in your real estate career. 1978. Homes before 1978 used lead paint. So, again, that's where that Residential Lead Paint Paste Reduction Act comes into play. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, 95. 5 more left. Complete the statement and make it factually accurate. In title theory states, banks or mortgage lenders hold the title of a property until it is paid in full. In lien theory states, however, and it gives us 4 options: the borrower retains title, foreclosure occurs through non-judicial proceedings, banks or mortgage lenders never retain title of the property, or D, banks or mortgage lenders hold the title of the property until it is 25% paid off. All right, so I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think this one over, come up with your answers, starting now. Alrighty, so what is our correct answer for this one? Well, it is going to be C. Banks or mortgage lenders never retain title to the property. So the correct statement to complete the statement given is: in title theory states, banks or mortgage lenders hold the title of a property until it is paid in full. In lien theory states, however, banks or mortgage lenders never retain title of the property. So in lien theory states, banks or mortgage lenders never retain the property. Instead, the mortgage lender holds a lien against the property. Thus, why it's called lien theory. That you just have to be familiar with these two types. You need to be familiar with title and lien theory. Why do you need to be familiar with both if your state does one or the other? Well, because this does come up when people are moving from place to place and maybe they're not familiar with a certain way, and as an agent, you need to be prepared to answer these questions for them. And again, that's why this is part of the national portion of the exam, because this is a United States issue. This is a United States problem that you need to be familiar with, the terminology and what goes along with it. And we do have a video on title versus lien theory if you want to check that out as well. All right, 96. What is the government issued plan to guide the long-term physical development of a particular area? Is it A, the master plan, B, the zoning plan, C, the ordinance plan, or D, the private property plan? So, gonna give you guys some time to think that one over, starting now. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys came up with the answer on this one, and hopefully it was the correct answer. What is our correct answer? Well, it is the master plan. Yes, you've heard it before. The comprehensive plan, aka the master plan, that is the document that is prepared by the local government to guide growth and development. It is generally a plan looking 10 to 20 years into the future of an area. These plans can be found at many levels, from neighborhoods to cities and counties, all the way up to the state level all across the US. You just need to be familiar with the master plan is and kind of how it operates. Because obviously, if you're working especially in commercial real estate, that's going to show up. You're going to have to deal with that in some instances with, construction and stuff like that. So, okay, 97. Purchase agreements come big and small and are a crucial aspect of real estate contract law. Which of the following would be an example of a purchase agreement? Okay, there's 4 options. A, going through airport security. B, signing a non-disclosure agreement. C, transferring funds to one agent from another to cover mileage. Or D, ordering something online and checking a box that says terms and conditions. Ooh, this is a little bit of a trick question. So have some time to come up with your answer on this one, starting now. All right, what is our answer on this one? Well, believe it or not, it's going to be D, ordering something online. So this is a kind of a trick question. Don't overthink this one. A purchase agreement is a contract that legally binds 2 or more parties together to a specific obligation. That creates a legally binding contract between a buyer and a seller. The best example, not the best non-real estate example, would be when you order something online. Sometimes websites will ask you to sign, check a box, it says terms and conditions. That's a purchase agreement. Most people don't normally read those, but truly should. Real estate purchase agreements function the same way, but obviously at a larger scale. So when we look at these other examples, you might have said, oh, well, signing a non-disclosure agreement, maybe that's a purchase agreement. No, it's not. That is just an agreement. If it's a non-disclosure, it's a different form of contract. Transferring funds to one agent from another to cover, that's not a contract. It could be, but it's not a purchase agreement. They don't define that in that example. The only thing that's specifically defined is D, ordering something online, terms and conditions. That is an example of a purchase agreement. So hopefully you got that one. I know that's a little bit of a trick question, but hopefully you got that one. Or if you didn't, now you understand why that's the correct answer. Okay, 98. Aaron can't get to his property from a public road without crossing over his neighbor Ron's property. In this situation, Aaron needs a what? Okay, it gives us 4 options. A variation from the local zoning board. B, a variation from the local zoning board and Ron. C, easement from ingress and egress over Ron's property. Or D, equitable title transfer with the permission of Ron and the local zoning board. So I'm going to give you guys some time to come up with this answer on this one, starting now. All right, let's find out what Aaron needs. So what does Aaron need? He needs a C. easement for ingress and egress over Ron's property. That is our correct answer. If Aaron can't get to his property from a public road without crossing his neighbor Ron's property, he is landlocked. Remember we talked about this earlier? Landlocked, due diligence with ingress and egress rights. Talked a little bit about this earlier. What would he need? Well, he needs an easement for ingress and egress over Ron's property. That would allow him to enter and exit the property. So it's as simple as that. Hopefully you understand that one. And if not, we do have a video on ingress and egress rights as well. All right, 99. The period over which a property may be profitably utilized is called its what? It gives us 4 options. And it's economic life, A, it's economic life, B, it's amortized life, C, income life, D, net life. Whew, sorry, tongue twister there. Yeah, so come up with your answer on this one. I'm going to give you guys some time to think it over. Alrighty, so what is our answer for this one? Well, it's going to be A. It's the economic life. So economic life is the expected period of time during which an asset remains useful to the average owner. When an asset is no longer useful to its owner, then it's said to past its economic life. The economic life of an asset could be different than an actual physical life. So a couple things about this. You might be wondering, when does this come up in real estate? Well, this actually comes up a lot in real estate investing. If a building has an economic life, or an investment or something like that, maybe past a certain time it's no longer profitable. So again, that comes up a lot with real estate investing, which obviously means that they want that to be covered on the real estate exam, especially if you're doing with commercial real estate, things like that. So that's kind of why we do talk about that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely be familiar with that term. All right. So question 100, what determines who pays for what and how much at closing? It gives us 4 options. A, the government, B, the seller, C, the buyer, or D, proration. So go ahead and come up with your answer on this one. Alrighty, guys, we've been grinding for a couple hours now. We're on the very last question. What is our answer? It is going to be D, proration. That is our answer. So proration is the allocation of or division of money items at closing. This mainly comes into play when a seller prepays the home taxes for the year because they paid for full year and are selling the property. The buyer will then owe the seller the remaining months of taxes. Makes sense, right? If you sell your house, let's say, in March, and you prepaid, or no, let's say you sell the house in, like, let's say February, and you prepaid till March, then you would obviously get that difference in taxes. That makes sense. It's only fair. So that's where proration comes up. So again, what determines who pays for what and how much at closing? That would be proration. And that is it for part 2. Wow. Okay, first of all, congratulations. If you are hearing me right now, that means you are a grinder. You're a hustler. You are a great person for studying, for making it happen. This was, I don't even know what our final run time is going to be. I feel like this was a lot longer this year because there was a lot of new topics to be covered, but I'm happy we did it. I'm so happy that you guys sat here and did this. A couple things before I go, and I know you guys are ready to go, but listen, first of all, if you do want to watch the 20 videos, feel free to. Again, a lot of that stuff still applies. Even the 2019 videos, that still stuff applies. Secondly, please check out our website if you haven't already. It's going to have this as well as tons of other questions, there's flashcards now. We have our prep course. There's so much stuff on there. It is honestly is the #1 study tool online right now. If you want to pass the exam, that is your ticket. Go to realestatelicencewizard.com. Check us out. You will not regret it. And then lastly, I just hope you guys have a fantastic day. I really appreciate you guys spending the time with me. Hopefully you guys had a little fun. I know this stuff can be a little dry, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to make, make it kind of entertaining, but also, you guys are here to learn. So hopefully you guys learned. Hopefully you guys learned a lot, and you guys feel a little bit better about the exam when it's coming up. So yeah, leave a comment, question, all that good stuff down below if you have any. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. This was Zach from realestatelicensewizard.com. As always, make today magical. I'll see you guys next time.